Hi there, in this video we're going to learn about circumference. First, let's start off with the vocabulary that you need to know. A circle is the set of all points in a plane that are the same distance from a point. Okay, so a circle, you can pretend like there are all these points around here, and they're all the same from the center of a circle. Okay, the center is a point from which all points on the circle are the same distance, and the circumference is the distance around the circle. Some more vocabulary. The diameter is the distance across the circle through the center. So this whole line right here is a diameter. And the radius is from the center to any point on the outside of the circle, okay? So it's from here to here. So the diameter is twice as long as its radius. The radius is half as long as its diameter, right? Think about it. The diameter is twice as long as the radius. The radius is half the length of the diameter. That's important to know conceptually moving forward. All right. So here's an example of a circle. Here's a center. The diameter across. The distance from the center to the any end point of the circle is the radius. And then the distance around the circle is your circumference. All right, let's talk about the circumference formula. So you can think of circumference as like being like the perimeter almost of a circle, right? The outside of the circle. There are two formulas for it. C equals pi times diameter, or C equals 2 pi r. All right, let's talk about pi for a second. Pi is the ratio of the circumference to the diameter, okay? The ratio of the circumference to the diameter, so from out here, so the circumference to the diameter is 3.14 for every single circle there is, okay? If you did the circumference divided by its diameter, you will always get 3.1415926, blah, 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 blah. All right, that's pi. That's where pi comes in. All right, find the circumference to the nearest circle, around to the nearest tenth. So circumference equals pi times diameter. So for this video and for this class, we're going to use 3.14 for pi, okay? For this class, I'm aware there's a pi button on a lot of your calculators, but for this class, just to keep everything consistent, we're going to use 3.14 for pi, okay? All right, so let's start with that formula. C equals pi times diameter. I'm using this formula and not the formula 2 pi r because I'm given the diameter here, right? All right, so I have 3.14 in place of pi times diameter. What is the diameter? It's 3 inches, okay? Multiply those two numbers and you get 9.4, so your circumference ends up being 9.4, okay? Let's look at our next example. Find the circumference of the circle, round to the nearest tenth. So now I'm using this formula, C equals 2 pi r. I'm using this formula because I'm given the radius here, not the diameter, okay? So 2 times pi, I'm going to put in place of pi 3.14, times r, 5.3. Okay, now you just multiply them, and you end up getting 33.3. So your circumference is 33.3 centimeters, okay? Bernard works at a community center that has a circular swimming pool with a circumference of 40 meters. So the circumference is 40 meters. He would like to use a rope to divide the pool down the center. This is the diameter, right? What should be the length of the rope? So if I'm given the circumference and I'm given the diameter, it only makes sense to use this formula, right? Not this formula because I'm not given the radius. I'm given the diameter. So I'm going to use this formula. I'm going to use this formula because I'm given this diameter. Okay? So in place of C, I'm putting in 40. In place of pi, I'm putting 3.14. And I don't know what my diameter is. Oh, look at that. 40 equals 3.14d. We have an equation. How do we get d by itself? Well, d is being multiplied by 3.14, so you would divide both sides by 3.14. 40 divided by 3.14 gets you 12.7, so your diameter is 12.7 meters. So the length of this rope would be 12.7 meters. A landscaper has a tree whose roots formed a ball-shaped bulb with a circumference of 110 inches. What is the minimum diameter of the hole that the landscape would have to dig in order to plant the tree? round to the nearest inch. All right. So we are given a circumference of 110 inches. In place of C, we're putting in 110. In place of pi, we're putting in 3.14. And the diameter, we don't know. We need to figure that out. 110 equals 3.14 times diameter. How do we solve for D? Well, we divide both sides by 3.14. Right, the 3.14s here cancel out. And you are left with 35 inches is equal to D. All right, so just some concluding thoughts. The two formulas are here. C equals pi times diameter, or C equals 2 pi r. And the vocabulary that's important to know. Circumference means outside. Diameter is straight across. The radius is from the center out. And the center is obviously the point in the middle of the circle. All right, thank you for watching. I hope you learned about circumference.